I want to welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Shades. It's your host, Terrain, and we have another fantastic episode for you guys today. It's you, it's our guest, and it's me, Mr. Behind the Shades himself. But before you see today's video, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So let's get into today's episode. How was your early 20s? Because from what I know, that's when pretty much it all started or it all began to go down that path. So bring us up to speed and exactly what did happen in your early 20s.
Sure, sure. Well, just to paint the picture for everyone. So, people see my title or they see my successes in the last 10, 15 years, and they look at me and they think, oh, she must have, went to the best school and then went straight into college and, had everything was perfect and then landed the perfect job. That I call it the white picket fence theory and assumption. Like everything for her must just have a white picket fence and works out perfectly. Now we're getting there, but I was not that way. Now I didn't grow up, I wasn't abused in any physically or in that way. I had a mother and I did not get along. I believe now she had low self-esteem and she was put into situations. Of course, now I know some of the things she went through as a child, and she was the oldest of seven children. Her next brother, when she was 10, or she was 11, I think, and he was 10, he hung himself. He was very smart. They were out in the country in South Dakota and had outhouses, and just they were poor. And my mom was in charge of the family and her brothers are more like brothers to me. Like my aunt, her sister was a year younger than me before she passed, God rest her soul. So her brothers were actually closer to my age than she was. So when you figure out all those things and what she was fighting for, but as a child I didn't understand it because I was at the brunt of her insecurities and her anger at the world. And so I ended up leaving it. I left the house at 16. They moved, we were in Texas and we had moved around a lot. My father worked for a packing house. Everybody always thinks the army. And he worked at the time, beef packing back in the day in the 80s was, 70s and 80s. It was huge in the country. And you would get moved if you were getting promoted. You would move if you were being demoted. And he had all of those things. So we moved around a lot. And my mother and I just never had a healthy relationship. And so at the age of 16, she, threatened me or something. I was like, fine, I'll just leave. And I did. I ended up moving in with who became my first husband, and he had two children. And that didn't last very long, but I did have two children, but I was in and out and back and forth, and ended up dropping out of high school. Then found who became my second husband and got pregnant with my third child. So by the time I was 21, I had three babies and two husbands, and did not graduate from high school. And I remember so I would have been 2021. Now I have three babies and uneducated, and yet I had all these dreams. And I can remember when I was 10 years old, I tell people there's this dream or this memory I have. I was going to be a singer. That's what I was going to do I was going to be a superstar. And I was going to inspire the world with my music, and I wrote poems, and I loved it. I loved everywhere I went, I would sing. And now I've lost it. I have a Stevie Nicks voice now. I used to have Martina McBride, but now we're like Stevie Nicks in one key. But now I sing Happy Birthday on Facebook. But that was my dream, and I knew I had talent. I knew I was going to be in front of people. Fast forward, lots of decisions made, bad decisions made, uneducated decisions made out of emotion. And I could blame my parents, and for a long time I did. But I think that's part of what I learned in my 20s is that you have to, and probably even my 30s, again, I was late to the party of self-awareness, but that you have to own all your decisions, even the things that you didn't have control over. you did something to put yourself in that situation. I think that's where people really struggle. And I know we'll get into that deeper. But so when I was 21, or when I was 10, I remember writing music, and it was, it was just this fabulous thing. And I remember one night I was sitting in, listening to Peaches and Herb, you remember, reunited. Now I'll sing for you. See, and that song was my favorite song, and it inspired me to write, 8, 10 songs in one night. And I knew this night I wrote the song that was going to inspire the world. And I wrote it, and I went and I was like, Mom, 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 I did it. Look at this song. And she came to the door, and she looked at it, and she looked at it, and she grabbed it, and she looked at it again, and then she ripped it up, and she threw it down, and she said, Shari, you're just a dreamer, and dreamers never get anything they want.